Presentation 9 is all about the stakeholders in a business, and stakeholders are these people or organisations who have an interest in the success of the business, and also by their actions they can influence the business in some way. So this is just what this first slide here says. Stakeholders are people with a key interest in a business and its success. Now that part's really important because competitors are sometimes put down as answers to questions as stakeholders of an organisation. Competitors are not stakeholders of an organisation because they have no interest in the business's success. These organisations really want the business to fail. So stakeholders are people who are interested in the business's success. Stakeholders affect businesses, as I've said, by exerting influence over the decisions, so they can have an influence to a certain extent in things that are happening in the business, as we'll see shortly. And the level of their influence depends on how involved they are and their interest in a company. So for example, shareholders will have a massive interest in a business because these shareholders could have purchased a large number of shares in the business, so really are looking for some kind of reimbursement for that in the form of dividends, and they clearly want the business to do well to keep their shareholding being positive for them. As far as examples of stakeholders are concerned, we look at these from two different aspects. We look at internal and external stakeholders, and internal stakeholders are obviously those stakeholders from inside the business. Now we have owners and shareholders here, and I know that shareholders could be the general public, but being owners of the business as such, then we regard them as internal stakeholders. Owners are obviously those people who own sole traders and partnerships, and your shareholders are the owners of the limited companies. We've also got managers and employees here. We treat them as kind of separate because they've got kind of separate interests and influences here. As far as external stakeholders are concerned, we've looked at a few here. We've got customers, we've got the banks, the government, suppliers, and we've got the local community. And as I say, the list could go on there, but these are just some examples. Looking at interests first of all, and as I've said, be very careful here because interests and influences are National 5 work. However, what's important to note here is that in order to answer questions on the higher work of conflict and interdependence of stakeholders, you have to know about the interests of the different stakeholders to be able to answer that question. So the National 5 work really has to be known before you can do the higher stuff. So just looking at some of the interests of the internal stakeholders, clearly owners and shareholders, they are similar. But owners and shareholders, they want higher profits, and for the shareholders, they obviously come in the form of high dividends. Managers are looking for promotion. They're obviously career-minded and are looking for promotion. They're perhaps looking for performance-related bonuses. And of course, there's a level of job security in there. As well as that, managers are also looking to make sure that their decisions are effective. They've got an interest in the effectiveness of their decisions. Employees are looking for better wages. They maybe want good working conditions, obviously, so it motivates them to work, and they'll also be looking for job security. As far as the external stakeholders, suppliers, the people who will supply you with your raw materials, your machinery, equipment, your stationery, any purchases you make, these guys are looking for regular orders from you, and they're also looking for prompt payment. If they're supplying you with goods and services, then they're looking for the money to be paid for them relatively quickly because they'll be out of pocket until you do that. Customers are looking for low prices, but being greedy, they're also looking for high quality products too. The local community is the area around and about, the people in the area around and about the company and where it's set up. So they're looking for an organisation to provide jobs for them so that people in the local community have some amount of affluence, of wealth. And obviously these the local community are looking for social responsibility. By that, we're talking about they don't want noise pollution. They don't want the organisation to be polluting the environment with, factory chimneys, etc. So they're really looking for the business to be socially responsible, the local community. Banks are looking for loans to be repaid in time. Businesses rely very much on banks to give them loans to keep their business afloat and to keep their business growing. But the banks are looking for organisations not to default in their loans to make sure they're repaid when they should be. And the government are obviously looking for businesses to pay tax on their profits. We call that corporation tax, remember, and they want to make sure that businesses are adhering to the legislation. So health and safety has been adhered to, minimum wage regulations, etc. So the government are looking for these things. We're now going to turn to influences, and this is what the stakeholders can actually do to affect the business. So if we take once again the internal stakeholders, owners and shareholders, they're looking for them to inject capital into the business. And remember, shareholders have got a vote at the AGM, and they can change the board if they feel that the board of directors are not doing their job properly. Managers have the right to hire and fire employees. So obviously hiring good quality staff is really important, and that could influence the business, and getting rid of staff who are maybe not doing their job properly. They are there to create policy, rules, and make decisions as well. So what they are doing is very important for the business, and that could have a huge influence on it. Employees, if they're not happy with the way the business is running, they could take industrial action, for example, going on strike. They could increase or decrease productivity depending on the way they're feeling about the business, and also provide good or bad customer service. We've got some more here. We've got looking at the external stakeholders now, suppliers. Well, what can they do? They can raise or lower their prices. If the business is perhaps not very good at paying or whatever, they could change their credit terms. In other words, don't give them as long to pay. The opposite would be true, obviously, if they are good payers. They can change their delivery times. That could influence the business as well. And as I say, raising and lower prices is obviously going to affect the business's profits one way or the other. The local community could protest. They could hold protests if they feel that the organisation is damaging the environment or it's not being socially responsible. They could do that by contacting the press, getting in touch with their MP. All of these things can have an influence on the business. Customers, now they can choose to buy or not buy products. That's a fairly obvious one. Once again, that's going to affect a business's sales and then their profits. And it could affect their reputation by telling people good stories or bad stories about the organisation. So that's going to affect sales as well. The government can change legislation, which they do quite a lot. They can actually change legislation that could lead to increased costs for the business because they have to maybe put more health and safety procedures into practice. For example, at the moment, during this coronavirus crisis, the government have changed legislation regarding the way that organisations can open up again, and that can be costing them money. To be able to put this legislation into practice, which could have a big dent in their profits. Minimum wage regulations, if they are increased as they tend to be with the rate of inflation, then it could be that that also costs the business as well, because their profits will go down, and the rate of tax to be paid as well. These things can all have an effect on a business's profits, really. Banks can grant or deny loans. As we know, not every organisation will be granted a loan from the bank. The bank may think it's not a reasonable venture, and they may not be allowed to qualify for a loan, so that could be a problem. They can change interest rates on their loans. The banks are at liberty to do that if they wish, and change their repayment details, change end dates, etc. for payment of the loan. So all of these factors will have an impact on the business itself. These are all influences. This is just this slide I was talking about earlier on. A common mistake by pupils is to assume that competitors are stakeholders. Competitors are not stakeholders, as they don't wish the organisation to succeed. So that's really important there, that you understand that you can't use competitors in an answer to this question. We're now really looking at the higher work, and what you have to do is look at the conflict of interest. So what we're taking here is we're taking two stakeholders who want two different things, but the organisation can't do both. They can't grant both, because doing one is obviously not going to be able to grant the other one. And this is what you tend to be asked at higher. This and the next slide on interdependence. So although stakeholders want a business to succeed, they can often conflict in their individual aims. So two stakeholders can't necessarily get what they want at the same time. So I've used owners here just to make it easy. I've not said shareholders, I've just said owners just to make it simple. So employees v owners. We could take an example there. So as far as the interest of employees is concerned, employees are looking for high wages. Owners, however, are looking for high profits. And the result of that is, if you have to pay the high wages, you can't have the higher profits, because profits are going to be affected if you pay higher wages, because your costs are going to go up. Another one's customers and the owners. The customers are looking for good quality products at low prices. That clearly is going to cost the business money by providing the good quality and giving them at a low price, and that's going to also be detrimental to their profits if they have to do that. So once again, there's a conflict of interest. Suppliers and owners, well, suppliers are really looking for businesses to pay very quickly for the products they get, so they're not out of pocket for any length of time. However, the owners are wanting to try and stretch it out to try and maybe get the profits, so the products sold on before they actually have to pay for the original products from the supplier. Once again, both can't happen. And finally, here we've got the government v the owners. The government are clearly looking to get as much tax as possible from organisations through corporation tax, and owners are in this problem where if we charge or we get higher profits here, we're going to have to be paying some more of that out in the form of taxation. So that can be an issue, and there can be a conflict there. Conflict of interest between both. Now, to answer this question, if you're asked about conflicts of interest, you'll normally find it's from the case study, not necessarily, but it could be from the case study, and you have to find stakeholders in the case study and then answer possible conflicts of interest. That's how that's answered. Now be really careful, because what you're wanting to do here is make sure that you've answered both parts of the conflict for your mark. So you would have to talk about the conflict from the employee's point of view and the conflict from the owner's point of view to be able to get your 1 mark for that one. The same comes for the next one, and we don't just say that stakeholders always conflict, because sometimes stakeholders really need each other. So you need to work together sometimes if the business is to succeed, and some stakeholders rely on each other to help them achieve their interests. So once again, we've got some examples here. Owners and governments. Well, the owners want to make sure that they're running a reputable business, and they want to make sure that they are given the legislation to be able to do that properly, so customers will come to the business and feel safe. And the governments are the ones who are going to be able to, or they're going to legislate, they're going to be the ones who are going to make up the legislation. So the two of them really need each other for that. The owners might also be looking for grants from the government, and the government are looking for the owners to employ more staff. So once again, that could be another interdependence. Owners and suppliers. The owners are looking for the suppliers to provide them with good quality goods and services, and the suppliers are looking for the business from the owners. So once again, that could be an interdependence there. Owners and customers. Owners are looking for the customers to buy their products, and the customers are looking for the owners to provide the products that they're looking for to satisfy their needs and wants. So once again, that's an interdependence. Owners and employees. The owners need the employees to be able to do the job, to provide the service to the customer, and the employees are looking for the owner to provide them with a wage for doing the job. So once again, there's an interdependence there. Managers and employees. Managers are clearly in charge of employees and wanting them to make sure that the employees do a good job, and the employees are looking to the managers to support them and make good decisions that are going to actually help them to do their job properly. So the interdependence and the conflict are the two sort of important areas for hire. However, the stuff from National 5, the interest and the influence are really important to enable you to do that. Thank you.